Right. Well, good afternoon or good morning to any of y'all who are not on the East Coast. Thanks to everybody for joining us today for this webinar, Streamline Portfolio Manager Data Entry with Automated Uploads. Today, we are going to be providing a closer look at how utilities and energy service providers are using the Portfolio Manager web services platform to help their customers benchmark in Portfolio Manager. Want to help you understand a little bit more about where and what is available to you and how you can consider the approach that is most useful to you in benchmarking your buildings. So again, thank you for joining us and looking forward to this discussion over the next 45 minutes or so. One thing I did want to check, Alice, I don't know what kind of responses we're getting on the polls yet. Oh, thank you for queuing them up. So out of the 20 or so folks who were in the poll, it seems like it's kind of split in terms of those of you who have worked or are working with energy service providers to exchange data with Portfolio Manager. Looks like about a 50-50 split. And then it looks like fewer of the folks on this call are leveraging utilities to provide them with data for benchmarking. So that's good to know, just to have a sense of who's joining us today. I did want to note that as we go through these learning objectives today, we are focused primarily on building owners. Those who are trying to benchmark their buildings in Portfolio Manager, trying to make them aware of the services that may be available to them from other providers, be they consultants or software companies or utilities. If you are an energy service provider or a utility who's tuning in today, certainly the hope is that you can learn a thing or two about user experience and best practices. But again, we are focused on the building owner operator audience today. So in terms of our learning objectives, the goal here is to provide you with an overview of Portfolio Manager's web services data exchange platform and to help you assess whether and to what extent your organization can take advantage of automated data uploads. And so we're going to go through a couple sections today. First, we're going to just briefly cover the three main options for getting data into Portfolio Manager. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about how to identify utilities and other third parties that are offering data exchange capability with Portfolio Manager. And then we are going to cover the process of initiating a connection and sharing request in Portfolio Manager with one of these web services providers. All right, so let's dive right on into objective number one, which is understanding the three options for getting data into Portfolio Manager. Now, if you are an active user of Portfolio Manager, or if you've attended one of our other Portfolio Manager trainings like Portfolio Manager 101, 201, 301, you may have some prior familiarity with each of these upload methods. So we're just going to quickly review them and then get into the meat of today's presentation. As you can see here, of the three options, the most basic way to get benchmarking data into Portfolio Manager for one or more properties is to enter data manually. And this is sitting in front of the Portfolio Manager web interface, logging into your account and entering buildings, one at a time. That's screen by screen, field by field. Portfolio Manager is a very intuitive process for entering data directly in the tool, but again, it can be time consuming if you have a lot of buildings to benchmark. So the other option, there's a spreadsheet upload option, which we'll take a look at quickly, and then the focus of today's call is using web services for a more automated approach. Let me just quickly share my web browser here, because I just want to orient all of you to where these various options are in Portfolio Manager. Once you're logged into Portfolio Manager, the home page you'll arrive at is the My Portfolio page. If you have properties in Portfolio Manager, they will be listed here. If you don't, this will be a blank section of the page until you add a property. Entering data manually starts with clicking Add a Property and then following the prompts all the way through. Portfolio Manager has been designed to try and prompt you through all the information you need to add, so it's intended to be pretty user-friendly. But again, if you need a refresher on the manual data entry approach for Portfolio Manager, any of our monthly trainings, Portfolio Manager 101, 201, or 301 may be right for you. So when we talk about the spreadsheet approach to entering data, that is an approach that allows you to upload or update data for more than one property at a time, or more than 1 meter at more than one property. It starts to allow you a little bit more scalability. The way you do it is log into your account and then come down here on the left side to upload or update multiple properties. And once you are in this section, you have a number of different approaches that you can take, each of which requires you to select the pathway, the specific data that you're trying to upload. It does guide you through the process of a customized upload template where you select the task you're performing, the properties you want to perform it for. It will generate a dedicated spreadsheet, which you then download, fill out, and re-upload. So this is a really powerful process that you can use in Portfolio Manager. If you have a handful of buildings, you may find this very useful, but it's still not fully automated, right? You still have to log into your Portfolio Manager account. You have to make the correct selections. You have to enter data into a spreadsheet. You have to re-upload it. But again, in the various ways to get data into Portfolio Manager, first you start with manual, then you've got a spreadsheet approach, and then today we're talking about the web services approach. So web services for Portfolio Manager, basically what this is it's an application programming interface that EPA makes available to third parties who want to communicate directly with Portfolio Manager via web service calls rather than going through the front-end interface. So basically, this allows these third parties to perform via sort of machine-to-machine communication tasks that otherwise would have needed to be handled by an individual sitting in front of their computer. Now, the question becomes, and sorry, I meant to switch back to the slides. All right. So now we want to talk a little bit more about, once you know that there is this automated pathway for getting data into Portfolio Manager, well, who's offering this? How can you find out if it's available to you? And where do you go to get started? All right, well, the first thing we're going to start with is utilities. So across the country, there are currently about 50 utilities that are providing streamlined access to energy data for benchmarking in Portfolio Manager, and about 40 of those are offering data exchange via web services. So that means that they are automatically uploading energy, gas, and or water consumption data to customers' Portfolio Manager accounts. And this is usually happening on a monthly basis. In most utility web service deployments across the country, the utility assumes that you've already set up your property records in Portfolio Manager. And so their typical focus will be on piping through the correct meter consumption data to your property records. Utilities typically don't send through property use data because it's assumed that the building owner or operator would have that information. So again, this doesn't remove any need for you to go into Portfolio Manager. You still have to have your property set up and a record to which the utility can send data. However, if you are using this service from a utility, what it does is it takes away the need for you to be hand entering in monthly utility consumption data. Well, your first question, and it's quite reasonable, is, well, how do I find out if my utility offers this service? Well, we'll go back to the web here. And the first place to find out, there are a couple ways to find out if your utility offers this. The first place is Energy Star notifications. Okay, so you may be familiar with the notification settings. They are up here in the upper right-hand corner of your Portfolio Manager screen. They will be showing on every screen you navigate to. Up here, you'll see there's a section called Energy Star Notifications. And if you click on it, you'll see that there are a number of different types of sort of programmatic high-level notifications that you may receive, but some of them look like this. It's a notification that says, you know, utility name may be able to send energy data to your building records. Okay, in this case, it's Consolidated Edison, which is the utility and one of the utilities serving New York City. So what happens here is Portfolio Manager is taking a look at the properties you've entered. It's taking a look at the zip codes, and based on building locations, it's identifying whether you have any buildings in your portfolio that are located in the service territory of a utility that we know to be providing direct data upload via web services. So if you have any properties that meet those criteria, you will receive a notification. You will be told which buildings in your portfolio have the opportunity to take advantage of this data service. And then there's information for you to click on to find out more steps about how the utility requires you to interact with them to start getting your data flow. So it's not sort of one click, set it and forget it. There is a utility defined process that you'll need to go through, but the purpose of these notifications is to help make you aware that, hey, you might not need to manually benchmark all aspects of your building. There might be an opportunity for you to get data from a utility. So it's certainly important and valuable to check those Energy Star notifications to confirm whether this option is available to you. Another approach that you may want to take is to take a look at an interactive map that Energy Star has set up. You can see the link up here on the screen. It's also going to be provided to you in the slides that you'll receive following the session. But in short, the short link is energystar.gov/utility-data. And what it takes you to is an interactive map that you can scroll around, you can move, you can resize. But the idea here is to help building owners and end users understand where utilities across the country are providing data access services. So you can either, zoom in, slide around, and click on a given region, or you can enter a zip code. Let's enter one in DC. You can search by zip code, and then it will bring up information. So it'll tell you, hey, in DC, both Pepco and Washington Gas are offering data access support through web services. And in fact, they are providing aggregated whole building data, which is especially useful for owners and operators of multi-tenant buildings. So again, this map is intended to give you more information about what services may be available in your locality. It contains some details about the nature of the services, and again, it offers clickable web links to take you to any utility-specific instructions for how to begin using these services. Did also want to note that from this link right here, utilities providing energy data for benchmarking in Energy Star Portfolio Manager. There's also a link to a more static fact sheet that contains this same information. So just depending on what's more useful to you, this fact sheet and this map should be in sync. All right, so that's how you would go about determining whether your utility is providing any solutions that could help you get data in a more automated way. And these resources are updated on a regular basis, typically about quarterly. So that should, again, help you to understand whether or not you were sitting on an opportunity to get some help benchmarking your buildings. All right, so utilities are one pathway to get data, but we also discussed that other third-party web service providers are out there. So non-utility service providers that offer data exchange via web services. Who are these folks? Well, they could be consultants, they could be equipment vendors, they could be software providers. Basically, these are service providers who have data that they want, have access to data that they want to pass through to Portfolio Manager on your behalf. So one typical approach here is for these parties to integrate Portfolio Manager web services into their pre-existing software platforms. So maybe you're already working with a company that provides data analytics or ESG reporting or energy dashboarding. Well, there are a lot of companies out there that already have these platforms, and what they're choosing to do is integrate web services so that in addition to the information that they're already providing you in their platforms, they're also pulling through metrics and information directly from Portfolio Manager. So one of the benefits to this approach is it means, depending on how they've set up their system, it may be that you don't need to go into Portfolio Manager as often. You just need to go into your service provider's platform, and they are pulling the data out of Portfolio Manager to present to you right there, alongside other value-added metrics that are part of their platform. But in addition to pulling data out of Portfolio Manager, there are a number of web service providers that are providing a more full service approach. So they are actually pushing data on your behalf into Portfolio Manager. So if you already have a Portfolio Manager account and properties set up, this might mean that they're simply making updates to your energy consumption data and your property use data on a regular basis. But if you haven't used Portfolio Manager before, there are some companies that can just set everything up for you via their own front-end interface. So essentially, they would create a Portfolio Manager account for you. They would create property records. They would populate energy data into these property records. So the record would exist in Portfolio Manager, but because of the setup here, you would be viewing everything through your provider's platform. Again, not every service provider that uses web services follows this approach, but there are a number of them out there that do. So how would you go about determining whether there is a service provider that you want to work with and how to get in touch with them? Well, we have an online list of service providers that exchange data with Portfolio Manager via web services. This is a live website. There is a link to it at the end of the slide materials, which we will share with you after today's session. But basically what we're doing is we're tracking the organizations that benchmark buildings on behalf of customers in Portfolio Manager. Year over year. We update these on roughly a quarterly basis, and what we're doing right now is we're showing the number of Portfolio Manager property transactions that have taken place for a given service provider over the past 12 months. The idea here is to give you a sense of who is out there using the web services architecture, to help their customers benchmark in Portfolio Manager, and also to give you some sense of the order of magnitude of who is benchmarking the most properties. But this list will contain everybody from the some of the bigger players that are doing tens of thousands of benchmarks, all the way down to smaller folks who might be doing in the tens or low hundreds. The idea here is, we're never going to tell you who you need to use, for a web service provider. The idea here is to give you intel about who is using these services to enable you to then reach out to these organizations to get more information as you deem appropriate. So certainly, if you're looking for a more automated solution to benchmarking, we would encourage you to take a look at this list. Review the list, see if there are any names you recognize. Maybe there are names of organizations that you're working with for other energy-related services. And if a service provider that you work with is not currently offering web services, well, certainly it would be a great idea to bring this to their attention. Maybe it's something they want to add to their service offerings. But definitely we want to give you the opportunity to reach out to any providers in the marketplace who offer this service, and it would be between you and the service provider to discuss how to move forward. Certainly, EPA's network of service providers, or the Energy Star service and product provider partners, can help you benchmark and manage your energy data. But in addition to benchmarking and energy data management, these organizations can also help you do a number of things, other things, including conducting building audits and other site assessments, identifying cost savings opportunities, putting together plans for comprehensive retrofits, helping you meet reporting and compliance requirements, and even earning the Energy Star certification for buildings. So again, if whether you are already working with a service provider or you're interested in beginning to work with a service provider, we do encourage you to reach out to those who are using the web services platform to see if they're the right fit for your organization. All right, so we've talked a little bit about what are web services, why can they help you, who out there in the marketplace offers these services. Now we're going to move into our last section for today, which is talking about the actual steps of connecting and sharing with a service provider. So once you've identified a utility or another third-party service provider who can help push data for you into Portfolio Manager, there are some steps that you'll have to take to begin sharing your data. And every organization that uses web services will have a slightly different setup and onboarding process for initiating the exchange. So in the steps that we're going to go through here over the next few minutes, we're going to provide some general guidance and best practices on sort of the process of connecting and sharing in Portfolio Manager. But we do recommend that once you've identified a provider organization to work with, it is important to coordinate directly with them to understand the specific process you need to take working with them to start the flow of data to your Portfolio Manager account. All right, let's go back live to Portfolio Manager, and we're going to talk about connection and sharing. Now, this may be familiar to those of you who have already attended any of the Portfolio Manager intro trainings, 101, 201, 301. As you probably know, connection and sharing is the process by which any Portfolio Manager user can allow another Portfolio Manager user to see, to view, or even edit property data. The sharing process consists of two steps. The first step is there actually needs to be an account-to-account connection put in place. And then once that has been put in place and accepted by the recipient, then there's the process of sharing properties from one Portfolio Manager user to another. So basically, connection and sharing follows the same general process and cadence, regardless of who you're sharing with. So if I wanted to share with my colleague Alice, if I had a building record I wanted to share with her, I would connect with her and send her a connection request. She would accept it, and then I would share one or more buildings with her, and she would accept it. And then after that process, she could begin viewing my portfolio manager records through her account. It's largely the same thing when connecting and sharing with a web service provider. However, there are a few idiosyncrasies here, and that's what we wanted to call out. So for some of you, this might be a little bit duplicative of things you've already learned, but can't hurt to talk through this process from a web services perspective. So how do you get connected? So obviously the first thing you need to do to begin exchanging data with somebody else is to connect with them. It's kind of like in Facebook. You can't start posting things on people's walls or commenting on people's photos until you're friends with them, right? So the contact level connection is kind of like a friend request. The way you do that is coming up here to the contacts link in the upper right-hand corner of your portfolio manager account. You will click on that, and then you'll see a list of any connections that you already have in place. If you need to search for a new provider to create a contact and connection, you'd click on this button here, Add New Contacts / Connections. And then there's a search functionality that allows you to look for them. So in most cases, if you are seeking to hook up your account to a web service provider, they will have given you their portfolio manager account. So let's just try consolidated Edison. So again, if I'm in New York City, and I am looking to get data from Con Ed, I know that they have published their portfolio manager account username in order to allow people to place connection requests. So I'd search, and you can see right here, Con Edison. They're turning up. I would click the button that says Connect. And because they are a web service provider, they may have some extra steps here that you need to follow in order to get connected with them. So in this case, Con Edison actually has this requester ID number that you need to generate through their own, through a separate platform. They also have a number of legal terms and conditions that you need to agree to before you place the connection request. These terms of use and any custom identifier fields will be different for every provider. Some might have more, some might have fewer, some might have none at all. But again, you would need to provide all the requested information and then agree to terms of use before you can send the connection request. I'm not going to go ahead and send this connection request because I don't want to gum up their inbox with, with a request that's not real. But generally, that's how you would send the connection request. And then it goes off to the recipient. They get a notification that says, hey, there's an incoming connection. Do you want to accept? They make the decision as to whether to connect or, whether to accept or reject. And then following that, you'll get a notification that says they've accepted your connection. Once the connection has been requested, the first step of the sync is in place, and now you can move on to sharing one or more properties with your connected contacts. So how do we do that? Well, we come up here to the Sharing tab, which will always be visible along the top of your screen. And from the Sharing tab, you'll see here that there are a couple of action buttons here on the top left corner. The one that, the general button that you would use if you're trying to share with any old portfolio manager user is this first one. But if you are sharing with a utility or a service provider to get them to exchange data via web services, this second option is the best one for you because it kind of streamlines the process and gets you where you need to go a little bit quicker. Now, if you accidentally start the process by using this first share option, in most cases you will get to where you need to be. But if you know that you are explicitly sharing with a web services provider, we encourage you to click this second button. And what happens is this: it takes you to a screen that specifically says share properties for exchanging data. And you'll be guided through a couple of steps. The first step is that you will need to select the web services provider account that you want to share your properties with. So a couple things here. This will be a pick list. You can only pick one provider at a time, and your choices will be constrained. So this is not going to present any any connected contact for you to share with. This is only going to present you with those connected contacts who are also web service providers. So basically, if you know who you want to contact, who you want to share with, and you've made the connection request and it's been approved, they should show up in this list. So you'll go ahead and you will select them from the list. In this case, I'm just selecting an account called Sample Web Service Provider. The next step then is you get to select your properties. And as you've probably seen before in other sharing demonstrations, you have a couple of options. You can choose one property, in which case it's just going to give you a pick list from your account. You can choose all properties, which just, select all properties that are in your Portfolio Manager account. And then you have the opportunity to choose multiple properties or properties in a group. And if you do this, what's going to happen is it's going to bring up an option for you to select your properties, and then it's going to bring up a modal window that allows you to select which properties you want to share. So this is great if you want to share more than one but fewer than all. It also allows you some nice functionality where if you have a lot of properties in your portfolio, you can filter by property type or by state, or if you have established any groups in your Portfolio Manager account, you can even choose properties by group. So that's a nice functionality. Right now, I'm just going to say one property, and I'm going to select a sample office building. All right, so once you've selected who you want to share with and what properties you want to share, you do have to choose the permissions that you are sharing with. So there are two main approaches here. The first option is what we call bulk sharing. So this is the simplest option, and this is basically saying I want to provide the same access levels to every building that I am sharing. Okay, so this is the way in which you can very quickly say, all right, I want to exchange full access for all my buildings, or I want to exchange read-only access for all my buildings. This is one click, and then it's applied across all the properties that you're sharing. There is this third option here called, and maybe you didn't see that, sorry, I clicked too quickly. This third option here called Exchange Data Custom Access. You would choose that if you wanted to be a little bit more selective in your permissions. And so you weren't simply providing full access or read-only access, but rather you wanted to kind of mix and match between the two. So perhaps you want to provide read-only data at the property, but full access data for these meters. Again, this just allows you to differentiate what aspects of the properties that you're sharing get shared at which levels. The other thing I would note is this also allows you to determine whether you want to provide share forward access to the person you're sharing with. Share forward indicates whether or not the individual you've shared with can then turn around and share your property record with somebody else. So if you give somebody full access, it's presumed that you're giving them share forward access. If you give somebody read-only access, the default is to not give share forward access. But if you're selecting custom access permissions, you have the opportunity to determine whether or not you're giving the recipient the right to share forward. All right, so when this is done, you go ahead and you apply your selection. And then that gets locked down, and then you'd have to just click Authorize Exchange. And what it's going to do is it's going to pass through all your selections to all the buildings that you're sharing, and will send out that sharing request for the recipient to respond to. I did want to quickly note the second option here, this personalized sharing option. If you click this, it will then ask you to go to a next page. And on that next page, you will have the ability to, in a more granular manner, set the various parameters. So right now, I'm only sharing one building. So actually, let me go back. This functionality is most useful if you are sharing, trying to share multiple buildings at a time, and they need different parameters for each property, right? So if you did that, you would be given this grid where you are actually setting up the data exchange parameters for each individual property. All right, you may not need this. This may be overkill, in which case the bulk sharing option is the right way. But again, if you want to set one batch of sharing permissions and apply it to all properties that you're sharing, use the bulk sharing approach. If you need to give different permissions for different properties and different meters, you would choose the personalized sharing approach. But whatever the case is, once you've made your selection, you click Authorize Exchange. Ooh, server busy. Huh. Well, maybe that won't go through now. Let's try it one more time. And this wheel will spin for a minute, and presuming that all is working correctly, it should drop me back into my page. Okay, apparently in this case, the provider that I am sharing with needs a little bit of additional information. And so there's actually a spreadsheet that I would need to download and then email to the portfolio manager team. But that is probably an edge case that's not going to be as common. Regardless, though, once you have completed the sharing request, that goes out there into the world, and it sits there, and it's pending in the web service provider's inbox. They can then review it. They can choose to accept or reject, but once they have accepted your share, you should see the notification here on the Sharing Notifications tab. You'll also then see the shared property show up in your overview table down here. So the overview shows the properties that you're sharing with different contacts, or you can view it by property. You could go down to the property, and then you can come here and you can see, all right, who has access to my property? From that same table, you can not only confirm who has shared access, but you can also choose, whether you want to change the access levels that have been provided. For instance, you might want to move somebody from read-only to full access, or from full access to no access. You can do that here. And in short, basically, anybody you've shared with, you can always manage their sharing permissions. So you can't change the sharing permissions of somebody who's upstream from you, somebody who shared with you, but anybody you've shared a property with, you can edit or revoke their access rights at any time. All right, so that's the basic overview of sharing with a web services provider from within Portfolio Manager. I'm going to drop back now into the slides, and let's catch up. You'll note that the slides that I have here on deck, there are actually a lot of screenshots in here to walk through the specific steps that we just demonstrated live. So in case you didn't remember, every click-by-click step that I just walked through, don't worry. We've got a sequential set of screenshots in these slides that will be sent to you in PDF form, so you'll be able to remember kind of the click-by-click process that we went through today. All right, but just looking back at what we've done over the last 35, 40 minutes. So today we touched on three main topics. We looked at the main options for getting data into Portfolio Manager. We discussed how to identify utilities and other third-party energy service providers that offer automated data uploads using the web services platform. And then we finished with an overview of sort of best practices and quick how-to for connecting and sharing data from your Portfolio Manager account to the account of a web services provider. As I noted, we are including in our follow-up slides a set of links to some of the resources we discussed today, the data access map, the fact sheet, the list of non-utility service providers that exchange data with Portfolio Manager. And then there's also this quick YouTube video. It's available from our training webpage or via this direct link. That goes over, how to connect and share with other Portfolio Manager users. In terms of additional help, always want to make sure that if you have a question regarding benchmarking, a first stop for you should be energystar.gov/buildingshelp. This is the primary help hub. There's an extensive list of keyword searchable FAQs. So if you're running into an issue, there's a pretty good chance that another user out there has experienced the same issue. So do take a moment to try and see if your question has already been asked and answered. If not, or if there are more specifics or technical issues that you need to ask about, you can always submit your question via an online form. We have a number of Portfolio Manager training resources available at the link you see here, energystar.gov/buildings/training. Those include PDF step-by-step how-to guides. There is, in fact, a how-to guide on how building owners would connect and share with web service providers. So that's a good follow-up to this training. There's also access to recorded trainings and short YouTube videos, and always information on trainings that are upcoming. The way you got here today was by coming to esbuildings.webex.com. That's our WebEx webinar channel. Definitely encourage you to bookmark that. That's where you can see the schedule of upcoming trainings, and also where you can access any recordings of trainings that we have presented live. So with that, I want to say thank you for